This episode of the Young Turks is brought to you by Squarespace.
Let's keep it real. You and I know that Fox News is obviously not fair and balanced. They do conservative programming. Now, they admit that their hosts might have some opinions. They're primetime hosts like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity. But they claim their news side, it is just straight down the middle news. Now, again, it's the world's biggest joke. Everybody knows it, except the only people who refuse to acknowledge it is the rest of the media. And by the way, I'll let you in on a secret. Here's why. Because a lot of them worked at Fox News or one day are going to work at Fox News, or they have friends who work at Fox News, so they don't want to criticize them too much. They don't want to say, oh yeah, my friends who work there or when I work there later, they're frauds. They don't do real news. So we have to keep emphasizing this over and over until it gets through people's thick skull. Now, perfect evidence comes in today. Bill Salmon is Fox News' Washington managing editor. Here's the editor of News. And he has written an interesting memo. But first, let's give you some background on it, okay? On Sean Hannity's program in August of summer of 2009, August 18th, in the middle of the healthcare debate, Frank Luntz, who's a GOP pollster, comes on and tells Hannity, hey, you know what? If you call it a public option, referring to, of course, a public option in healthcare, if you call it a public option, the American people are split, which, of course, is not true. Luntz knows that the American people are totally in favor of it if you call it a public option. But he continues, if you call it the government option, the public is overwhelmingly against it. See, this is exactly Frank Luntz's job, and he does it well. He goes and tests terms and phrases and then says to the Republicans, if you call the estate tax a death tax, then people are against it. If you call it an estate tax, then they're in favor of it. So just change the terminology and you'll win, right? He's very, very good at his job. And so he says, call it a government option. Oh, government, right? Hannity's ecstatic. He thinks that's a brilliant idea. Hannity says, you know what? It's a great point. And from now on, I'm going to call it the government option. Now, if this just happened on Sean Hannity's program and they ended it, fine, no problem. He's an opinion host, and that's perfectly fine strategy on their part. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Bill Salmon, that news editor we told you about, decides that he really likes this. And he's going to, along with apparently the other top brass, as you'll see in another memo, are going to push this to their news division. So here's the memo that he writes to his so-called reporters and news anchors. And it's, as you can see here, on October 27th. So a couple of months later, he writes, number one, and this is the subject is friendly reminder. And it says, let's not slip back into calling it the public option. Number one, please use the term government-run health insurance, or when brevity is a concern, government option, whenever possible. When it is necessary, number two, when it is necessary to use the term public option, which is after all firmly ensconced in the nation's lexicon, use the qualifier so-called, as in the so-called public option. Number three, here's another way to phrase it, the public option, which is the government-run plan. And number four, when newsmakers and sources use the term public option in our stories, there's not a lot we can do about it, since quotes are, of course, sacrosanct. If we could, of course, in other words, we'd change the quotes too, but they'd really catch us on that one. So from now on, we're going to take the Republican pollster's idea and apply it to our news division so we can slant the news in favor of the Republicans. Does it get any clearer, right? Now, in case, by the way, if you notice, this is a friendly reminder. Apparently, the brass had told the news anchors and reporters before, and they were halfway using it. And what Media Matters did, which broke this story, they tracked it, and they tracked the Fox News anchors. And sometimes they would say, after the August 18th Frank Luntz appearance on Hannity, sometimes they say government option, sometimes they say public option. And then the memo comes for a friendly reminder, everybody get on board, you're not allowed to call it a public option. You must call it a government option. And then another boss, Fox's senior vice president for news, Michael Clemente, comes in with this memo. He says, thank you, Bill, referring to Salmon's, and he says, look, number three on your list is the preferred way to say it. Write it, use it. Michael Clemente, senior vice president of news. And if you remember, number three was the public option, which is the government-run plan, okay? And then Media Matters tracks their anchors afterwards, and they say on air, for example, on Special Report with Brett Baer, which is supposed to be straight news, government-run health insurance option, government-run insurance plan, a government insurance plan. It's a so-called public option. That's from correspondent Jim Angle. And it goes on and on and on. And from then on, all the so-called news reporters call it a government option or one of those variants, which was allowed by the news editors at Fox News. Come on, how clear does it have to be? Now, when they challenge Bill Salmon on this, and they say, well, that looks pretty damning, right? And, everybody knows you have a conservative slant, and is this your way of telling the news side, hey, take the slant of our opinion, guys, and apply it to your news? He says, oh, he's outraged. He said, what? No, of course not. Here's the problem. Bill Salmon has been on the record for, where he, by the way, here's his quote when asked by Howard Kurtz of the Daily Beast. Have I said things where I take conservative view? Give me specifics. Oh, don't make it that easy on us. You're going to love the specifics. Okay, first of all, he's been on air. He said over and over that, he's on the conservative side. That's his opinion. Bill O'Reilly introduced him as, quote, Mr. Salmon obviously is a conservative, and coming from that point of view, that's how O'Reilly introduced Salmon when he was on his air. And then you had Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday saying, quote, I think it's fair to say you tilt conservative in your views, which he did not disagree with. But here's the fun part. Bill Salmon has written books. They are published by Regnery Publishing, which is a conservative publishing arm. Okay? Let's see if the titles are unclear. Here are the titles. At Any Cost, How Al Gore Tried to Steal the Election. Number 2, Fighting Back, the War on Terrorism from Inside the Bush White House. Number 3, Misunderestimated, the President Battles Terrorism, Media Bias, and the Bush Haters. Well, are you unclear as to what his perspective is yet? Title number 4, Strategery, How George W. Bush is Defeating Terrorists, Outwitting Democrats, and Confounding the Mainstream Media. I don't know. What do you think? Is Bill Salmon fair and balanced? Which side is he on? I don't know. And then finally, his other book, The Evangelical President, George Bush's Struggle to Spread a Moral Democracy Throughout the World. I can't quite make it out. Which side do you think he's on? And look, you can be a news editor and have an opinion, whether it's a liberal or conservative opinion. It's a different matter to say to your news reporters and anchors, you must have my opinion. And not only that, you must, in a very subtle way, trick your viewers into being against one side or being against one issue by using Republican pollster or Democratic pollster ideas and phraseology to deceive your audience. We're not really doing news. There's another word for that. It's called propaganda. And that's exactly what Fox News Channel does. And this is yet another case of overwhelming evidence of that. New sponsor at the Young Turks, Squarespace. They help you build websites. They've got 24/7 support, and they've built some of the largest websites in the world.
They have an iPhone app, so you can edit your website on the go.
TYT promo code, 10% off for the life of your order. Squarespace.